Okay, so it's on.
We are live.
It's on.
It's on.
Ish.
Unique New York. Unique New York. The arsonist had oddly shaped feet. How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow?
We're good. Check, check. 1, 2.
No, you've got to say the Human Torch was denied a bank loan. It's on. It's on. It's always on. Jamie, you're always on.
Oh, beyond yet.
Yeah, but he's got to show you this text. He's got to show you a meme real quick before we get started. He's like, hey, look at this. This was on Instagram earlier. You know, this is why we don't do this for a living. This is why we build motorcycles. Because we would super suck at audio video, man. I'm telling you right now.
But you look really good with your microphone that you
Well,
stole from Jeff
I
Gordon.
learned
It
this-
hopefully gets rid of some of the hum.
So, you know, some of my heroes, you know, obviously it's Ricky Bobby, but also Vince
We-
Vince Oslo from ShamWow, Slap Chop. You also may know him from getting his lip bit by a hooker.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how he ended his infomercial career.
Illustrious career.
Yeah. Yeah, he went to it's hard to say. That's not in the police report.
But it was
But I
West
imagine-
Los Angeles, and he did go to jail. From
So
what
he got
Yeah.
ShamWowed.
But you know what? We have products made in Germany, and you know they make good stuff. So we're going to talk about drivetrain components and upgrades that we like to do on some of our big motors, since we talked about engine builds last time. So I don't know if everybody out there can hear, but feel free to ask any questions. We've got a slideshow, so let's show this first one. Hit
All right,
hit
coming up.
space. Bam. So check it out. Here
Hey,
is
Cedric.
here's a stock clutch
Kill the
basket on 100. We don't need to kill the music.
Music.
We don't need to kill the music.
No. Leave it.
Yeah.
Hey, Cedric, leave it. Sorry.
This clutch basket was on a 130 horsepower bike. The guy liked to dump the clutch all the time, and obviously the stock basket couldn't handle it. You can see the cracks here. The fingers are broken completely off.
Yep.
So one of the things we do to rectify that is by using some of our aftermarket clutch baskets. Now you can just see, even if I hold this up next to the screen, the difference in how much more robust the support grooves are, and the outside retaining banner is
And the
on
difference
this
is the
basket.
metal. That's a billet piece. This is a cast piece. So
So the metal itself is much stronger.
way stronger in the metal itself. There's natural porosity just by the nature of how the metal is produced. Yeah, there's porosity in the metal naturally by the way it's produced. That is a piece of billet, far stronger. It won't fracture like this does. What's approximately what's the level of horsepower we're running that on?
You know, a lot of it is subjective to the way the person rides, because you have products like the variable pressure slip plates that you can install on a stock clutch. And if you have a 150 horsepower motorcycle and you do most of your power at roll-on speeds, so you're already going somewhere and you just want to pass a car blinding fast, or you just like to see how fast you can get to 100 just for S&G, this will hold 150 horsepower with improved springs. But if you sit at a light and you hammer the clutch at 120 horsepower, you can break a basket, or you can slip plates.
Right, and that's the difference I try to explain to people a lot on the phone is there's a difference between roll-on holding power and the shock load that the clutch sees. And when you get those heavy shock loads, we're not just looking at the hub, the basket, the clutch elements themselves, but sometimes some of the other supporting parts in the clutch as well.
How do you work
That-
with these lights humming like this all day?
That's why we run the music so loud so we can't hear all of it.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's loud. Anyhow, this little unit right here is very, very cool. We put this on, man, I would say probably 75% of the jobs that we work on. Even on applications where we're just doing a simple cam upgrade on a stock compression bike, If you're two up, heavy loaded, and you want to be sure that your factory clutch bites, doesn't have slip, create heat, or ruin the clutches over time, these are really nice to have. They're not that expensive, $345.
Yeah, it's a pretty economical way to handle quite a bit more power.
Exactly. And then once we're beyond this, if you are going to be going into the heavier shock load and starting to kind of street race or drag race your bike, then we start to get into these units. And we really like the Barnett Scorpion stuff and the BDL product quite a bit. We've run the Barnetts both with a BDL and a Trask basket. We've run the BDL with both baskets, and they're really, really great. They're a little bit heavier in the hand, and when you start to put the more aggressive springs on them, I don't have one on the table here, but there is also a Lightforce Clutch that AIM makes that will work in conjunction with this. This is another one. That's the Mueller. It's basically a little bit differently proportioned slave cylinder that gives you a mechanical advantage on the push rod to the clutch, makes the clutch lighter. So where we're adding clamping force and pressure here, you can overcome that with the slave cylinder on the bottom.
So one of the things that we also do once we get into the heavy-duty clutches, we get a lot of people asking about Compensator Eliminators, and we do run Compensator Eliminators. However, we usually don't do it with a stock clutch and primary tensioner setup, because especially on the M8s, here's an M8 stock basket. As you can see, when this fits together, this is a limited slip pressure plate, so it twists in and out. Well, as it's doing this with pressure pulses, if you take the compensator out of the equation, then the clutch plate becomes the compensator, and it's pretty loud at idle, so you will definitely notice that there's some clacking going on, and it will destroy your clutch eventually. Here's the stock compensating unit, and it absorbs the engine pulses by moving up and down these ramps. And when the compensators go out, and you hear like when you shut the bike off and it has a clunk, 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 it's this rotating around these ramps and slamming inside the primary chain case. So when we run the eliminators, it not only reduces weight and drag, but it also reduces the amount of parasitic loss from this gear sliding up and down the ramp. But you can't do this setup with a stock M8 clutch. On some of the older twin cams you can, but I still don't recommend it unless you upgrade to a billet basket, because those motor pulses are going to still be in your drivetrain.
And at that, even when we do that, we can't even use, we found over time, the factory primary chain tensioner anymore. We switched those out for a hydraulic unit, really kind of keenly designed. It's got an oil pickup in the bottom that pulls up primary fluid, and it basically has a check valve on it, so it'll pump itself up, relieve that pressure, maintaining constant pressure on the primary chain. So as your primary heats up and cools, it'll absorb the differences in dimensions that we're playing with in the primary, and keep proper tension on it all the time, and it helps soak up some of the backlash that you see in the primary chain. Really,
and the motorcycle we have in front of us has most of these products installed on it.
You can actually see that here. This is that hydraulic tensioner unit I'm talking about right there. So it's got a little pickup down here. That is a pressure relief preset from the factory. You can see it's kind of got some Loctite or some kind of adhesive on it to make sure they've tested it at the factory. And then we've got the billet basket, the clutch, primary chain with the comp eliminator. That's the assembled unit in the bike. Now this particular bike, we're crossing our fingers, is going to break 150 horsepower, and it's going to need every bit of that to stay alive.
You're crossing your fingers?
No, I got a pretty good idea it's going to do it.
I was kidding.
By design.
Hit
Next
space
one.
bar. Yeah.
Oh.
You
Can I go
can
back
just
one?
do it once. It's too late, man. I don't know how to go backwards on it.
I don't want to try.
Oh, left arrow?
Left arrow. See, now you did it. There we go. Okay. All right.
So here is a compensator ramp that is broken. You can see the cracks, and that's from the hammer force of some of these big power bikes just dumping the clutch and putting so much power right into the drivetrain immediately that instead of it riding up the ramp, it shocks the ramp sideways and eventually breaks these parts. Now, another thing to keep in mind, these are not unsatisfactorily produced parts, but the stock motorcycles in the configuration that Harley puts them on the street are not necessarily designed to do what they're capable of doing. So you can exceed what these are designed to do, and that's what's happening when you see this. I mean, this is something that doesn't happen every day. If you have a 114 and you put a Redshift 468 cam or a SNS 465 cam in it, you're probably not going to have any of the failures that we're talking about. These are some pretty extreme bikes with some pretty extreme riders on them that are actually physically breaking this stuff and then coming into it saying, I'm not sure what's going on, but
Yeah.
I just don't have a clutch anymore.
I mean, if you want to break a factory bike, we can break a factory bike, with stock power. Not a problem. It's just how you treat it, But when you go to the extremes, a lot like anything else in high performance and racing, you just got to put the right supporting parts around it to deal with what we're throwing at it. That part was never intended to handle 130, 140 horsepower, full load, dumping the clutch. It just wasn't.
I'm not sure what's next. That's as far as I got.
That was all the stuff we had?
That's all we really need. Everything else is going to be show and tell.
Yeah, let's show them this. Check out the difference in a Barnett setup of a factory. Talking about exceeding the limits. This is what a factory clutch friction element looks like. That's a Barnett, right? So in addition to adding clamping force, you've got all this surface area to pick up that friction and put it to the ground. This does a fine job, up to, sometimes 130, 140 horsepower. But when you really, really want to make sure you're getting every bit to the ground and not slipping the clutch, that's when you go to these elements. This is produced, and they've billed it as being 50% more friction area and holding power than a factory clutch assembly. So just neat stuff. Well made. Same thing with the pressure plate. Really nice billet.
Yeah, and we got two different styles of pressure plates. This is a lockup style plate. Yeah. So the way the lockup plates work is it works off centrifugal force. These weights have little arms on the back side of them.
You can actually see them
and
on the
the
back of that
faster
one.
it spins, the farther out the weights move, and it pushes the plate and makes it physically unable.
You can actually see the arm on that one moving slightly right there. And this one's for a Milwaukee 8, but you can imagine this kind of a unit sitting right on top of there, and as the weight slings out, it just levers pressure against the clutch. Just like that.
How does it go?
Hmm?
With these units, we have different setups of springs. There's 3 different weights of springs. You can get a 4th weight, but they're really not needed on street applications. And with different combinations of springs, you can put custom loads of spring pressure on there. So you can try to keep the clutch somewhat manageable, because, when you have one of these super heavy duty clutches and you pull it in and it really pulls on your fingers, it's not that big of a deal until you're in town in traffic and you're going light to light and you have to hold the clutch in over and over and over again. At some point, your fingers are going to get so tired you're not going to want to hold the clutch in. And the last thing you want to do is not be able to do it anymore. So we usually recommend, if you're going to go to a super heavy-duty clutch, to use a hydraulic conditioner on the other side in conjunction with that to lighten that force back up, so that if you do have to hold the clutch in for extended periods of time, it's manageable. Because there's a few people here that know what I'm talking about. They're like, it's fine. I like it stiff. They ride it for 2 or 3 weeks. They come back. Okay, is there any way I can get it a bit easier?
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. I mean, they're designed for one thing and one thing only, and that's to hold the clutch together so that it will not disengage under power.
Yep. Talk about chain conversions at all?
Dude, I haven't talked about anything.
I said, do you want to?
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about all of it.
All right. One thing this bike also has is a Cush drive chain conversion kit. This one is made, you can see it over there.
Zippers.
It's made by Zippers Performance. It is a Cush drive assembly. So last time we were together, we talked about the polyurethane Cush drive assembly. This is created to bolt straight into the factory Cush drive assembly. It also, the zippers kit comes with a axle and adjustment kit. This is a Brock swing arm, but you can see on this how you've got the
If you go
nut.
right next to it, there's a stock axle.
Oh yeah. It eliminates.
I took care of you, Aaron.
It eliminates this cam assembly right here. This is Harley's solution for adjusting your belt tension, right? You ride this cam, you have your short side, your long side. That kit gives you a proper bolt with a holding nut and allows you to adjust your chain tension properly. It'll hold a lot more power, it's more finely tunable, adjustable, and that's how quality pieces like this come as well. Same kind of assembly. That is a really nice piece. That was, I think at one point maybe going on this bike, but Brock swing arm, completely fabricated out of aluminum. I don't know exactly how much lighter it is, but it will get rid of quite a bit of unsprung weight on the bike, improve the handling, especially when used with a really good set of rear shocks and a matching front suspension. Just really nice stuff.
On that Brock swing arm, if you order one of those, they take weeks. They don't have them in stock. They make them per order. So if someone's looking for a swing arm like this for their bike, we have them in stock. Give Aaron a call. They're awesome. That one is set up so you can actually run the factory location or a little bit before the factory location to give your bike more height for turning.
Where's
They
the
also
voice
make one
coming from?
reversed for your shocks where you can lower your bike, but that one's to make it turn better. I just wanted to go over that.
Can you hear that voice?
We're leaving you now, Mike.
God. And what's the difference too? I'm a little bit unfamiliar. The mounting points on the stock, are those rubber? On
The bushings are on the outside, the rubber pillion,
Gotcha.
pillow.
So this
pillow blocks?
replaces it with a full, basically a Heim joint at that point, right?
Sure.
It's like a full bearing.
The I lost my train of thought now.
It's a spherical bearing in there.
Well, does anybody have any questions on any of these setups so far? This just doesn't seem
covered
to be as
everything.
exciting as last time.
Hmm?
This is going much faster than last time.
It is. Yeah, we kind of covered some ground.
We should
No
be more
questions.
unprepared, so it takes longer to cover the material like we did the first time.
Yeah.
Does anybody
It's like a box opening.
So, we've seen a few transmissions get pretty banged up and clutches and stuff like that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what type of rider gets away with sticking with stock and what type of rider doesn't, where is that kind of fine line drawn? At what point is it that you kind of need that upgrade? Is it when you're doing burnouts or when you're dropping it at a light and trying to take off, or if you're taking it to the drag strip? Where does that, because again, we've seen many bikes with quite a bit of horsepower on stock drivetrain that guys just kind of, roll on power on the highway and stuff like that don't have any problems at all.
Well, mostly what I've seen is the ones that are having actual damage in the drivetrain components are the bikes that the guys are taking them and they're just going from a dead stop and hammering it through every gear as fast as they can. Because we've got 124s out there that are 145 horsepower, 135 foot-pounds of torque, or vice versa, whatever, and they've got a AIM VP SDR clutch with upgraded springs, and the rest of the drivetrain is stock, and they have no issues, and they ride them pretty hard. But if you put the amount of force that the motor will unleash instantaneously into the drivetrain, you're going to stress the weakest components. And if the weakest component is your compensator, that's where the failure is going to be. In the transmissions, we've noticed that it's third gear. So some people are hammering through the gears so quickly, especially when we upgrade the clutches, because it has so much clamping force and there's so much positive connection, that when they're hammering through the gears, if they hit third gear just right, it'll shear all the teeth off of it. And what is funny is it doesn't happen when they're out tooling around, it seems to happen the next time they ride. So it'll crack it all, and then the next time they ride, it just breaks off at a random point, and they're just going down the road and all of a sudden have no third gear. And most of them come in and think it's a tuning issue, which is the funniest thing. Like, I don't know what happens, but it just has no power in third gear anymore. And we've seen, about 4 of those, 4 or 5 of them now. And they're on various builds. You know, we've had a
114 do it.
Yeah, 114, a couple 117s, a 124. And it's just random. But the common denominator is the one thing they say is nobody beats me. I don't ride it hard, but nobody beats me.
Do you think that it all has to do maybe with the fact that by the time you get into third gear, you're entering third gear at peak torque? And when you're dropping that, you know what I mean? You're up in the RPMs to a point where you're at peak torque, and when you drop the clutch and hammer it in third gear, that shock load at peak torque is just, the thing doesn't have a chance.
And the way the Christmas tree transmission is designed, that just may be the one point, because if that's the weakest point in the transmission assembly, that's where the shock is going to be felt the most.
Well, it can also be that these guys are doing roll-ons with their buddies at 50 miles an hour because they're probably in fourth gear running 50.
And then dropping
then you're dropping it down straight to third to hammer it, and that's probably where we're seeing these comps, the baskets,
launching it,
and even third gear
could be
kind of get shredded. Just besides moving momentum from a dead stop, it's probably when they're downshifting hard to throw the bike into higher RPMs to get that from a roll.
Yeah, it's possible to do it on downshift. We had a customer this last week call us that we did a build on, like unrelated to power. It was, I think, a panic downshift shattered a transmission. So they break. They'll break if you hammer them hard enough.
Well, we're going over these trannies right now. We just want to clarify a lot of these problems we're not seeing on a lot of bikes. These are for guys that are really pushing these bikes to the extremes, really going after, or for the customer that's built a motor, wants to go to Sturgis, wants to ride, never wants to worry about a problem. These are things we've identified. So if you can make it bulletproof, let's make it bulletproof.
Right.
But do you have to do it on every motor build we do? Absolutely not. No. I mean, shoot, the 120R we have in my bike doing 135 horse, we got a stock comp in there still, a stock basket, and a belt, and it's not missing any teeth. It's kind of how you treat the beast, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've kind of talked comp, clutch, chain drive. What about the transmission? What can you do with the transmission?
Well, the easiest solution is to go with a product like the Baker Grudge Box or something similar to that is made out of much more robust material to start with. Because another thing to think about is manufacturers, they don't make inferior products, but they have to mass produce them. So when you look at a Baker Grudge Box, I think they are somewhere around $3,800 for the cassette, where a stock Harley transmission is like $1,300 or $1,400, something like that. But the difference is the Baker's hand machined out of super hard material. The Harley transmission, they have to make thousands of them, and they have to make it at a price point that it's cost productive for them to put them in all their motorcycles all the way across the board. Now, Harley does make some pretty high performance parts, and those are purchased separately. They don't come on the motorcycles either. And all manufacturers do that. I mean, there's Nismo, Mopar,
SRT for
SRT.
Ford.
There's and what's GM?
Yeah, I don't know what GM is.
Waste management.
Oh, stop it! I should know because I'm a Chevy guy.
But it's a lot of people you get all these guys talking on the internet like, oh, it's Harley junk. You spend all this money for this motorcycle, and then you got to spend all this much more money to improve it. There isn't one manufacturer out there of any vehicle on the road that doesn't have some sort of a high performance line, and none of it's stock on their motorcycles. It's all something that you purchase in addition to if you desire to go to another level.
Well, also with Harley doing what they're doing, if they made the transmission bulletproof, it would up the cost of the vehicle $2,000
right
for
That's
everyone.
The they're trying to strike a balance between manufacturing cost and what the parts will tolerate and what's necessary from an engineering standpoint, right?
And that's the same. So when you can unleash how much cost savings or every dollar that you can spend on your motorcycle to improve it, and you're able to put the best parts in it, you can get something significantly stronger and different than what the factory came out with. And that's all over the motorcycles. You know, we have guys that keep the bike stock and they do rims, tires, and we're doing suspension, no motor.
Sure.
We have guys doing motor first. It just depends where you want to spend it and what you want to do.
Yep. I talk to customers a lot, and I've fielded similar questions to that, and my answer a lot of the times is that the aftermarket doesn't build parts with compromise. You know, like you've
Right.
got, when you're in an OEM situation, you've got a series of compromises. You've got a guy counting numbers, you got a guy on a line assembling it, you've got manufacturing costs, and they have to balance all that together to come up with a package that makes sense for what the part will tolerate, the ease of installation, cross-compatibility between other models within the line.
And the
all-
final price point of the vehicle.
Exactly, and the final price point. So when you go to the aftermarket, they're building that stuff with no compromise whatsoever. They're just trying to build the absolute best part they possibly can. Yeah, they're looking at a bottom line to make it where it's not completely priced out. You know, like these clutches, for example, you know, basket, $429, $592 for this bit. So you're going to be, you know, with the bearings and the clips and stuff you need to install it, plus labor, you're going to be about $2,000 into getting that job done.
But the likelihood of a failure on this basket is very slim.
Correct. That's exactly right. When there's just no compromise, the best parts you can get.
And the belt that comes on your bike from the factory is the most convenient.
Smoothest,
Drivetrain, yeah,
quiet.
smooth, quiet. There's really no maintenance on it, and if you're not applying high horsepower like we're doing in these bigger builds, you're not braking. I mean, they're pretty much rated for 75,000 miles with, you know, you're adjusting your axle, but you're not having to clean it. You're not waxing it. You're not doing anything to it as far as upkeep besides keeping the tension correct.
Right.
Yep. And if, you know, you took that same setup and gave it to a guy that's going to put 40,000 miles on his bike every year, and you tell him, yeah, basically every other weekend you've got to be out there scrubbing a chain and cleaning it, he's going to tell you, what did you do to me? I hate this. I don't want this on my bike.
Hand me the axle.
Yeah, when we go to a chain conversion, you're going to pick up noise, and you're going to pick up some more maintenance as
Right.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know that going into it, that it will make noise when you're coasting down. You are going to need to clean it. You're going to need to get some brushes. You're going to have some chain wax ready to go as you go through it, because those things, you're going to want to maintenance that before you make your 5,000-mile scheduled maintenance at your dealer.
And the difference in feel you get when you ride a bike that's set up like this one, or like Todd's bike is now set up, the immediacy of the throttle, I mean, it is, you can absolutely feel it. I mean, the bike is just absolutely immediate on power. There's no slack, no anything. It just puts the pound straight, you know, the power rather straight, pounds the ground with it. And, you know, again, if you were to tell a guy that wants nothing but quiet and comfort and cruising that that's how his bike is going to handle, he wouldn't want that. So,
Right.
you know, as OEM, they're trying to figure out that middle ground between, you know, quiet, comfortable, but still able to handle the power. And this stuff, though, is just, it's not that. It's 100% performance.
Yeah. What do you need brakes for?
We don't need brakes.
For the people online, I said, what
Brakes are
about
for
brakes?
quitters.
Well, there's a lot of different options to go with brakes. You know, we again, that's something that you can kind of tailor to the build, because there's so many different variables. That's almost kind of its own show. Like brakes and suspension is kind of a whole different topic, because we don't have any visual aids for one, but you know, if you the stock Brembo brakes are actually pretty high quality as far as an OEM component goes. So I know there's a lot of people that'll, especially in the Dyna community, you know, they throw away the Kelsey Hayes and they get the Brembo 4 pistons, and they do the dual disc and all that. Again, there's a line between what you think is cool and what is actually effective. And for 90% of what people do, the stock application is effective. You know, if you're somebody that has a bike like this and you've got a suspension upgrade, you've got maybe the Kraus inverted front end, you hammer the hell out of corners, you know, like some of us do, you're going to want to probably upgrade your brakes, because you're going to be in your brakes so much. It's actually the heat from the prolonged clamping force that makes the brakes have issues, not the brake systems themselves. Most of the times when I see brake issues on stock motors, it is, believe it or not, because somebody keeps their toe on the brake pad, on the pedal, because they want to make sure that they're there so that they can be right on it if they stop. They don't realize that as soon as you push the pedal in, you push the hydraulic fluid and you start putting clamp force on the caliper, and it heats the brake up. Then when they need their brakes, the brakes aren't very good because they're so hot already that they've already gone into the fade stage.
Boil the fluid.
All right, I got a question from online, and I think this one plays in pretty well. And the guy said he started doing police rodeos on my personal bike, slipping the clutch in first, hours on end. You know, the routine that we've all been real familiar with, day after day. A heavy clutch is not an option. Where would you go to ensure longevity? So for somebody like that that's really beating up their clutch, not necessarily out of horsepower, but out of, you know, maybe the way you ride,
Elements and stuff.
or not, you know, what recommendations would you have for a situation like that?
So an application like that for a police rodeo, you're not trying to hold back a lot of foot-pounds of power. You're just trying to have a positive load under heat. So these kind of baskets, there's, like I said, there's a fourth kind of spring. You can get a super light spring for these, but you're going to have so much more life out of having a more robust clutch friction plate, because as it heats up, you have this surface area that can withstand the amount of heat and friction that's going to happen when the clutch is slipping back and forth versus the stock plate. So this is going to last 2 or 3 times as long. The replacement plates aren't that much more expensive than OEM. After the initial expense of the basket, you can set the baskets up with a light pull for those kind of applications, and you're going to get twice the life out of a basket like this, or out of a hub like this. And with that application, you don't necessarily need to go with another basket either, because this will mount right into a stock basket. Thinks I need a beer? I'm not sure who that is, but I agree.
No, and talking about this stuff too, one of the reasons it is sized the way it is, right? Same like a brake. A brake's primary job is to convert motion to heat energy. So what you're doing with something that's this size is converting that energy to heat and dissipating it more quickly. So you can get the heat in this clutch and dissipate the heat way more quickly and get back to a responsive action with that clutch better than you can there. Once these go off, they start to go off and they start to bake and burn, you're done. This will dissipate the heat way quicker and handle it repeatedly better. Any questions from inside?
Enough. It contains the
9 or
required
10.
amount.
They're asking, have you ever seen clutch slip on the dyno but not in the street?
Yeah. Yeah, actually I have. Quite a bit. A lot of times when people bring a bike in to dyno, they'll either do the work themselves, or they'll have the work done maybe somewhere that's not quite as familiar with all the components that are needed. They'll bring it in to dyno it. They've never actually gone to a full throttle, full out pull, so they don't realize that it's happening. And some people will have clutch slip and don't realize what it is either. When your clutch is slipping, you can usually tell in a higher gear like 5th or 6th, and you can usually tell on the highway when you're running around 2,700 RPMs or so, 2,700 RPMs, and you go to a full throttle, and the RPMs will increase, but your speed doesn't. That's how you can tell your clutch is slipping. Now, that can also be if you're underpowered or have a tuning issue. So sometimes it's a trick, but you can see it on the dyno because it makes a really strange line. It looks like a little curly Q instead of having an arc.
So another question here is really good, and I know you can go on this one for a minute. And he was asking about what's a good primary fluid to deal with all that heat and friction in the primary.
I'll tell you, my new favorite is Bel-Ray.
Okay.
Look at this.
Perfect timing.
Bel-Ray primary chain case lubricant. It's made in America, but sold by the leader. I don't understand that. We have to ask them that. Why a USA company sells bottles by the liter.
That is strange.
I don't have anything against the metric system, but you would think that
America.
it would be in quarts like the rest of the American companies. The manuals are in quarts. But yeah, this stuff is super good. It's extremely low friction, and it withstands heat very well, and it does not hold heat like 2050 does. So there are some companies out there that make 2050 like synthetic oil that say you can use them in all three holes. You can use it in the transmission, the motor, and the primary. I do not recommend putting 2050 motor oil of any kind inside the primary, not because of the clutch, but because the stators get so hot. I've seen charging systems have issues over and over and over again from running like Royal Purple 2050 or Amsoil 2050, Redline. I don't put Redline in anything that I own. I do enjoy that oil because it keeps me employed, but I don't put that in anything.
So since I got the question, and I know we're not really talking cams and stuff tonight, I did get a question that said, what do you guys think the best 114 build like has put out numbers wise? What do you think the best 114 build we did?
The one
we've
he's going to
done?
get.
Yeah, the one he's going to. Well, yeah, they always
next
can
one.
get better.
Yeah.
But, I kind of told him, I said, man, we'd probably have to go to the files for that. But I figured I would throw it in there anyways.
Well, I'll tell you a pretty killer setup is
132, 138.
yeah, a high compression 114 with heads and a fueling 508 cam and a D&D pipe.
With an HPI 62 millimeter
Yeah,
on it.
those cause some of these failures.
Southern Oregon Hot Bikes.
Moonshine.
I didn't have the microphone, so it's the people that make the tensioner we had talked
Yeah,
about
we sell
earlier
these.
is
Yeah, we sell that.
Southern Oregon Hot Bikes or whatever. Yeah.
They are difficult to get, though, and we can get them.
This is a lively crowd.
We didn't serve enough beer before we started this one, I think. Or we
Well,
didn't drink
we
enough
had plenty
beer.
of time because
Maybe we
had
didn't
so
drink
many
enough beer.
technical difficulties.
We should be drinking right now.
Yeah. So does anybody else have any questions or? Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
absolutely, man. We can wrap this up. You want to give a plug before we leave or anything? Give Aaron a call.
Yeah, call
Yeah.
me.
The number's been on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, if that's a good point. If you do want work done, don't think that because we're approaching winter it's slowing down. It's not. We're carrying straight over. I'm booking right now into December, and I don't see it slowing down that much. We're getting builds coming in from all over the country, so if you want to reserve a spot, call me at 615-771-7775. We'll have a number in this area or something maybe, or down the bottom. Yeah, call me. We are booking up. We've had customers in this week from several states, and I don't see it slowing down.
Yeah, we've got a couple here tonight.
Yeah,
We've got some visitors from Virginia.
Mr.
They
Jansen.
rode down on the coldest day of the year. Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty hardcore.
Oh,
Scotland.
wow, that's cool.
We've got Indiana over here. We appreciate you guys coming. There was somebody from South Carolina that was maybe going to come. No? Did he? Oh, okay. And then, yeah, like, I'll wait till next week. Hey, we're from the South, man. When it's 28 degrees, we're done. Hang it up.
Whiskey and fireplace time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if that's it, we
We'll wrap
appreciate
it up.
donations, how we get this killer equipment. I'm going from here to, I've got to fly my helicopter over the Smokies, so, I don't have a lot of time.
That's it.
That's it. Let's play some Skinnerd, man. I'm out.